Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's event, Work Ready, Busting Myths on the Future of Work. We have a really great program for you, and I hope that you all enjoy it. Before we get started, I want to talk about Work Ready, the Work Ready program. Many of you have already heard this before through my colleague Oleg, who is the lead for Work Ready. But for those of you that are new, welcome. We're so happy that you're here. And this is the last event for session 4, but we have 2 more sessions. And the Work Ready program was really designed to help our communities during COVID, the COVID pandemic. Many people lost their jobs, or it was a great time for them to sort of shift their focus, their professional focus. So that's how the Work Ready program was born. And we have 3 different stages for the Work Ready program. The first is that we're trying to breach the digital divide, and we're doing this by checking out laptops. We're loaning out laptops and portable Wi-Fi hotspots. And we have several of our locations where you can go and pick those up at the participating libraries. I will post more information about how you can sign up for those in the chat. The second way that we're doing this program is through the events like this one. We're doing live virtual events as well as pre-recorded events that will be going up on our YouTube channel. We have a work and career playlist specifically where you can watch older presentations of the Work Ready program, and I'll post a link for that as well. And lastly, the third way that we are attempting to help our communities learn more about professional skills or different ways that they can improve their work situation is through our catalog. We have amazing books and audiobooks and all sorts of materials related to entrepreneurship, the gig economy, all kinds of professional books. And we have those in our physical collection as well as our digital collection. And I'll post more information about that in the chat. So now we can go ahead and get started. I want to introduce our amazing presenter for today. Her name is Georgia Gillan. Georgia is a research manager in the Equitable Future Lab at Institute for the Future. She has worked on several projects on economic inequality, including supporting the work of California Future of Work Commission. She has conducted economic research on the problem of insufficient retirement savings as a driver of economic insecurity. Before joining IFTF in the spring of 2018, she produced MOOCs on sustainable development across multiple domains for the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Georgia holds a BA in economics from Bard College in New York. Welcome, Georgia. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so let me go ahead and make you a presenter.
Okay. Are we good?
Yes, I'm seeing the slide, and maybe if you just move your mouse a little bit. There we go. Perfect.
There we go. Okay.
Floor is yours.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Ana Sylvia. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. I appreciate you all being here. So I'm Georgia Gillan. I'm research manager in the Equitable Futures Lab, as Ana Sylvia said, at the Institute for the Future. So Institute for the Future as a whole is a 53-year-old nonprofit organization founded in 1968. It was a spinoff of the Rand Corporation, and our mission is to combat short-termism and help individuals, organizations, universities, governments, and others think more strategically and imaginatively about the future in order to make better decisions today. So even though we're called Institute for the Future, we don't focus on predictions, we focus on forecasts of different possible and plausible futures. So never predictions. If the future could be predicted, why are we doing anything today in the present to change our outcomes, right? So one thing we live by at the Institute is the notion that there are no facts about the future, which is kind of liberating. So in order to come up with different possible futures, we conduct different types of research and use various methodologies to think more systematically about the future. Towards the end of the session, we'll do one exercise that's like a game to get your futures muscles pumping. So another tenet of futures thinking is looking back to look forward, meaning really examining the forces that brought us to the present, understanding the historical trajectory that led us to this present context is a really important exercise for challenging our faith in conventional wisdom. To remind us that things didn't always used to be this way. You know, us as humans, we live within a limited time frame, so we can tend to think that the way we live is preordained. It's really hard to imagine there's a different way than the way we currently organize our lives and work. For instance, the way we work today is a direct result of certain forces of the past. If you look at the totality of human experience, we didn't always work for organizations or work 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. jobs, although this is changing with COVID and all those huge changes that are happening right now. So things like the invention of the clock made coordinating labor much easier, let alone possible. So connecting the past and the future with the present is central to futures work. And being able to debunk the myths that can govern the way we think about work and life is important in creating the future we want to live in. So a recent project at IFTF I was a part of was supporting and coordinating the work of the California Future of Work Commission, created by Governor Newsom with the overarching goal of developing a social compact for California workers based on an expansive vision of economic equity that took work and jobs as the starting point. We released the final report in March of this year, and so I'll review the final recommendation areas after I bust some myths about the future of work. And then, as I said earlier, we'll end this session with a game, Futures Thinking game. We'll use the power of a 10-year time horizon, which is our usual foresight timeline at IFTF. Hopefully it'll shake up your imagination, challenge your assumptions, and generate a more flexible, foresightful mindset that you can take with you for the rest of the day and beyond. So during the presentation, please put any questions you have in the chat throughout the session. I'll make sure we get to them during Q&A at the end. Okay, on to the myths. First myth is, oh, those are the myths, okay. First myth is the robot apocalypse. So have you heard people talking about automation and AI leading to widespread job displacement? Do you think this is likely? Let me know, put your answer in the chat. I'm curious what you all think. So zooming out, the MIT Technology Review found that expert predictions on the job effects of automation range so widely that there is no consensus on the impacts of automation. There are about as many opinions as there are experts. So looking back in history, we know we've been through this threat of a robot doomsday takeover before, at arguably an even grander scale. So looking back to the 50s and 60s, there were huge automation concerns, and many manufacturing jobs did disappear as new machines were able to exponentially increase output. This was much discussed, and in fact, in 1964, there was a report on manpower, automation, and technology in California. Not too dissimilar from the California Future of Work report, actually. So this report set out to consider the impact of automation and technological change on the California workforce and how the public and private sector should adjust to avoid adverse effects on the workforce. Actually, the second sentence in this report is, one of the most urgent problems of our time is rapid technological change. And actually, milk delivery was among one of the top concerns here. The extended shelf life of milk, which is also a technological advancement, was a huge concern, even though it was also a technological feat and ultimately great for the masses. So then in 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson commissioned the report on the National Commission of Technology, Automation and Progress. And a lot of recommendations put forth by this commission are eerily similar to the conversations about the radical ideas today. For instance, no qualified student should be deprived of education at any level because of his family's lack of financial resources. Another one is a minimum guaranteed income. So recommendation number 9, technological change and productivity are primary sources of our unprecedented wealth. But many persons have not shared in that abundance, and they recommend that economic security be guaranteed by a floor under family income. So history, while it doesn't always repeat itself, does rhyme, as Mark Twain said. So University of Chicago economists found that while 13 million jobs had been eliminated during the 50s, the adoption of new technologies and their new affordances led to the creation of more than 20 million new positions. And so to be clear, there was job displacement during this time. However, the changes led to all these new industries and services generated through this technological advancement. And so, in fact, the only job to have been fully eliminated, though, is the elevator operator. If you think about it, the elevator operator had a bunch of different tasks in addition to just pressing buttons. They greeted people as they came into the building. They were sort of a low-level security, helping people navigate the building. And all of those tasks that I just named represent different jobs today, like doorman, security guard, concierge, etc. So today we live in a completely different economic and social and environmental context where the US is no longer a manufacturing hub, but primarily a service-based economy. And in a service-based economy, humans are crucial. But an unfortunate byproduct of this is that these jobs, service jobs among others, are getting worse. They're not paying living wages, and they're becoming less likely to offer important benefits like paid sick leave, retirement, healthcare, family leave. Luckily, states can mandate their own minimum wage, but federal minimum wage, $7.25, hasn't increased since 2009. And during this time, the cost of basic needs like housing, childcare, education have risen faster than wages. This isn't good news, but it's important to remember that policy can change this because policy is largely what got us to this place in the first place. So, an important step to busting this myth is to look at the actual data. So what are the jobs with the most openings in California over the next several years? You'll see that most of them require human labor, and this is over, the next decade or so. And so what are also the fastest growing occupations in California? They require humans. So to wrap up this myth, discussions around the future of work are largely dominated by concerns about automation, but technological change encompasses so much more than automation, which ultimately presents new opportunities and also shapes the nature of work in many ways. Next myth. The skills gap. So again, put in the chat if you've heard people say, you should go back to school to learn coding, or everyone should get degrees in the STEM field in order to make a living. So no one disagrees that going to school and learning more is a bad idea. And there's plenty of evidence that getting a 4-year college degree has benefits beyond earning potential. But if you look at this data, there has been an increase in the amount of low skill and high skill jobs. I don't love the term low skill because it assumes that those jobs require no skills at all. But I would argue that a great amount of skill is required in low wage jobs, emotional intelligence being one of them, mental accounting, ability to think quickly on your feet, patience is a huge one, just to name a few. But a lot less jobs these days are low or are middle wage. So there's been a proliferation of low wage jobs and high wage jobs. So there are many advocates for upskilling, but training programs must come with a well-paying job at the end. So also in terms of educational attainment and wage growth, if you look at the wages or salaries of people with college degrees or higher, wages haven't increased much between 1979 and 2018. On average, wages have only increased about 11.6%. And during the same time, output per worker, or productivity, increased by almost 70%. So why aren't wages increasing by the same amount as the output per worker? Automation and non-worker-centric policy. So also during this time, the top 1% saw their wages increase by 165%, and the 0.01% of earners saw their wages increase by 340%. And so how do you explain this increase? Is it because these people are the best at computers? I think we know no, that's not the reason. You can see that productivity gains directed to profits and not wages. Top executives in corporations and the financial sector captured most of these profits. So while the workforce earning less than $15 an hour generally has lower education levels than the total workforce, low-wage workers have higher levels of education than typically believed. Another reason why looking at the data is so important. So in California, 1 in 5 low-wage workers has a college degree. So when talking about the skills gap, workers are limited by the jobs that actually exist in the labor market. So upskilling and education alone is not a sufficient strategy to improving outcomes for low-wage workers. Next myth. Gig work is new. This is not true. Does anyone here work in the gig economy? Let me know in the chat. So a lot of focus has been given to gig work as a new form of work, but it's really a manifestation of a long-running trend called the fissuring of work. So Brandeis University professor David Weil coined this term, which means the offshoring, outsourcing, and increased reliance on staffing agencies, contingent employment, and limited benefits, which all contribute to a steady shift away from full-time work with benefits to alternative work arrangements, which is really characterized by a deterioration of the employer-employee relationship. So this fissuring produces poor working conditions and low quality jobs for millions of workers as their relationship with employers is further and further away. So these employer-employee arrangements are at the core of changes in work and are key to the deterioration of job quality. So gig work is the interaction of this fissuring of work and technological development, which has essentially digitized poor working conditions. So similar to the elevator operator example, more jobs are being broken down into tasks and farmed out as piecemeal work for on-demand gig workers at low wages. So the employment forms in gig work are migrating into more mainstream work, irregular scheduling, workforce monitoring, data collection, etc. The flip side of this is that with the right policies, gig work doesn't have to be bad work. There's nothing inherently bad about gig work that should make it a poor quality job. So again, looking back into history, we see that gig work isn't new, and it largely does not provide the economic security we need to survive and thrive in this country. To this end, we can look back in history again and note that manufacturing jobs used to be really dangerous. They were poorly paid, but through policy and worker power and organization, manufacturing jobs became good jobs. And the same could happen for gig work. So back to the commission, the 3 myths we just talked about were a backbone of the recommendations and the work we did with the California Future of Work Commission. We the commissioners rejected the notion that the future is inevitable, which is a huge starting point. We rejected the notion that automation will lead to widespread job displacement and that there's a skills gap leading to higher unemployment. This enabled the Commission to have a more nuanced understanding and vision of the future of work, which led to these 5 priority recommendation areas. So 1, ensure there are jobs for everyone who wants to work. 2, eliminate working poverty. 3, create a 21st century worker benefits model and safety net. 4, raise the standard and share of quality jobs. And 5, future-proof California with jobs and skills to prep for technological, climate, and other shocks. So our California Secretary of Labor, the incredible Julie Su, will actually be leaving California and going to DC, as she was confirmed a couple weeks ago as Deputy Labor Secretary in the Biden administration. So I'm very hopeful that policies that give workers more power in the labor market will be realized sooner or later. Living wages should not be a radical thing or a hotly debated topic in politics, in my humble opinion. So with the recommendations listed here, there are some initiatives already underway moving towards this vision of economic equity. So job guarantees have resurfaced in policy discussions. A universal family care is an emerging policy that is pretty much just like it sounds. It covers care for any care need for any person at any stage of life. Every person will need to interact with the care economy at some point in their life. And it's an insurance fund to make care affordable and accessible to all. Another relating to job quality and future-proofing California is California's High Road Training Partnership, which is an industry-based and worker-focused training program for California's high road employers and focuses on equity and job quality. So these employers are not engaged in a wage race to the bottom, and they generate family supporting jobs where workers have agency and voice. So one other initiative is nonprofits and California counties working together to expand worker ownership opportunities, which would eliminate working poverty and raise quality jobs. The city of Santa Clara and the nonprofit Project Equity are doing this work to help businesses who don't have succession plans. So, okay, we just busted some myths and talked about how things could be different through this new social compact and the new initiatives underway. So now we're going to quickly play this game called 100 Ways Anything Could Be Different in the Future. So Jane McGonigal, Director of Game Research and Development at IFTF, adapted a game called 100 Ways Anything Could Be Different in the Future. So the goal of this game is that you'll have a clear idea of what assumptions you have about how things work today, and then 100 new ways to challenge those assumptions going forward. So how to play. First, we have to pick a topic, and given the topic of today's session, we'll go with future of work. So the next step is to list 100 things that are true or generally true about work today. So we definitely don't have time to list 100 things, but anyone please put anything in the chat that are generally true about work today. There are no facts that are too obvious or too simple to list. When thinking about this, you can also think about what life was like before COVID and how true facts about work have changed over the past year and a half or so. So I will list some up here, but please put any in the chat that you want to share. So here's one: work generates income. Another fact about work today: your boss or superior determines your pay. Another one: work provides important benefits like paid leave, retirement, healthcare. Another one: people spend a majority of their day at work or working. So now we'll come up with 100 ways work could be different in the future by imagining a future in which any of these facts is no longer true. So we'll flip these true facts for the future and rewrite each one to be the opposite of what is true today and or offer a new alternative. So this exercise really stretches the imagination. So don't hold back in your thinking. We quote renowned futurist Jim Dator, who says, any useful statement about the future should at first seem ridiculous. Remember, there are no facts about the future. So try to think about why this change has happened. So let's say 10 years in the future, work doesn't generate income, work generates assets. What if instead of income, your work gave you a home or a piece of land, maybe furniture on payday, or fertilizer or soil for your garden, or art or jewelry, assets that will appreciate in value, um, or financial assets like treasury bonds that would continue to appreciate. So why in the future would work give you assets instead of income? Part of this game is to put yourself in that future. How did we get here? Well, one idea is that we know income today isn't really providing the economic security we need. So, what if, as compensation, we're given homes instead of money? And maybe at this point in the future, guaranteed income or universal basic income is in full swing. So right now there actually are some enterprises and restaurants actually that provide housing for its employees because the cost of housing has exceeded average pay in some places. So how about the next one? Your boss or superior determines your pay. So if we change that in the future, what if your employees determine your pay or an independent party determines your pay? So why in the future would employees determine your pay? If we think about how CEOs, their income and compensation is almost, 300 times that of the median worker, maybe it's time for someone else to determine pay. So there's no sort of conflict of interest there. And this is already happening in some organizations where, especially in worker cooperatives, where people, decide together each person's ownership stake. So that's one little game. I don't think I saw anyone put anything in the chat, which is totally fine. This is, I mean, it's a sort of weird game, but really gets you thinking.
Georgia.
Thanks. Yeah.
We actually did have a few
Oh, we
responses.
did.
Like to read you those out. We had
Yeah.
things would going back to the barter system. So, difficult to
Right.
value assets for compensation. So someone said that we could go
Yeah.
back to that.
Uh-huh.
Um, so that one I thought was really interesting because yeah, that there was a point where it wasn't all about money.
Right.
Um, And that one was one that I saw a few other people. So remember everyone to please put to all panelists so that Georgia can see your responses. And I'm going through
Oops.
um, that no money will be needed in the future was another one.
Yeah, so I'm curious, the person who said that, in what would bring us to that world where we wouldn't need money anymore? What different changes would have to happen in the economy, and in politics? It would seem like widespread economic security would be crucial in that sense. So we would need all of our basic needs met. Um, More credit cards like that, just a lot of reward points to get through life.
Mhm.
I would enjoy that.
Yeah.
Um, right. Um, so one other thing that could be different, or that's true now, provides important benefits like Social Security and healthcare, um, paid sick leave, paid maternity leave. I mean, the US is the only advanced economy that doesn't mandate paid leave, um, which hopefully will change in our lifetimes. Um, but so imagine 10 years in the future that work is no longer tied to important benefits. So why in the future would this happen? What changes would need to occur in order for this world to exist? There are proposals for portable benefit programs where you have access to health care and retirement and paid sick leave, paid paternity and maternity leave, just because you exist in the world as a human. Um, so, what changes would need to happen in order for portable benefits to become a reality? If anyone has any ideas, please put them in the chat. Um, but thinking about it, humans would need to value, or no, the economy would need to value humans over profits. And I feel like right now we're in definitely a paradigm shift is approaching. So, sort of restructuring the economy, easier said than done, but also hopefully this will happen in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, someone
so,
said we would all be equal and
mm,
all needs met by the standard government. So that might be
yes,
something, think you said things that are going to be separate from our jobs. It would just kind of be the basics. So I think in some senses, some of the
right,
things that are being brought up would be a restructure, like you said, but easier said than done.
right. And it's not like this is impossible, right? We can look at other industrialized economies who are doing this pretty well. Um, so we should look at our global neighbors in restructuring most things.
Yeah.
Um, so when you play this game at home, you can even do it with at the Institute, we've done it with 100 ways dating could be different in the future. Oops, I keep doing that. 100 ways the future of meat could be different in the future. There are all these different topics, even shoes. What would be different about shoes in the future? So when you play this game, you can ask yourself some deeper questions. Why in the future would this happen? Which of these 100 possible futures that you come up with would you most want to wake up in? Why? Which would you want to avoid? Why? Etc. Um, so I think I'm ending a bit earlier than expected with this presentation. So hopefully we can have a longer Q&A. Um, but so basically, the takeaways here are futures thinking is really a mindset. And once you can expand your sense of what's possible, different possibilities emerge, and you can start working towards this future. The future is not inevitable. Really look at the data, look in the past to understand the complexity and larger context in which all of this is taking place, to understand what is possible in the future. And the myths that we talked about, those look at the data. We'll have this presentation up on the website so you can review it. And thank you for listening to this talk.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Georgia. That was really, really fascinating. On a personal level, I love
Awesome.
having these kinds of conversations where we envision the future and what can happen. And then I think COVID definitely restructured the way that we thought about work.
Right.
Uh,
Even
so
talking
it's
about the 9 to 5, or, every day we go to work. Those things we, didn't imagine were possible, and they happened almost overnight. So
yeah,
again, no
yeah.
facts about the future.
Exactly. I mean, you just have to adapt to what's happening. And then so many companies have shifted their models just based off of productivity and what they saw in their employees who are working from home. So it'll be really interesting to see
Yeah.
what's going to happen going forward.
And you can
Um,
imagine if you did play this game sort of on a regular basis, you kind of, your mind is more flexible in thinking about the different possibilities. And so you're not, so you might even have been more prepared for COVID if 100 ways anything could be different would be, sort of part of your regular mental exercise. Um, and it's also fun to play this game with kids because things can get kind of goofy.
Thank you again, Georgia. Thank you to our audience.
Thank you.
I hope that you all have a lovely day, and we'll be seeing you in September.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for participating. And thank you, Anna Sylvia. I so
Yeah, thank
appreciate
you.
you.